Hello, it's me again. I just thought I'd do a bit more of an update on this, which I have already done one video about, which is called the Plasma T1. It's a LED light strip. Comes as a single solid plug and play unit. I still love it. I think it's one of the best things I've come across as far as being able to properly do sound to light displays, which just are so hard to find in the modern age. Since we stopped using simple incandescent devices, which just disappeared into the 70s and 80s, we've just stuck with the usual, I think, quite horrible digital juddery binary on-off LED displays that when they react to sound they don't really. They just basically react to spikes and do preset patterns which they go through 1, 2, 3 of each. This is very different. This reminds me mainly of the mothership from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think it's very reminiscent of that. I think if anybody ever wants to make a model of there's such a thing, they could possibly take out the innards of one of these and put it in a base, and I think that would make an absolutely amazing looking display. It would certainly finish off a model of that, although I can't imagine anybody building a model of that because it's incredibly complicated looking with all these spires sticking out in all directions. Nonetheless, that's what this reminds me of the most. Possibly the person who designed this was thinking of that. Anyway, this time around I'm going to show you a few of the other effects that it can do other than the sound reaction. Now, here's our remote. Now, the main thing to know is that these, across the top, those are your disco effects, those are your wave effects, and those are your lamp effects. Now, the lamp's fairly boring. Those are your colours. There's obviously red, green, blue, and so on. There's an auto function as well, which you can make it go through those. There's also a subset with this button here, which for the longest time I couldn't figure out due to the instructions being in Dutch. If you press that, you get this, and that apparently is just a light. But you can change the colour temperature of the light if you press shift and then that button again, and it'll phase through. Oops, SE, hang on. No. Got it, sorry, it's the left and right buttons. These are normally used for brightness, but it'll go through the different various colour temperatures, and it manages to basically give you more subtle lighting colours, something reminiscent of pastel shades, which you can't get with these more stronger colours down here. And each time, once you've set it, if you go off to something else and then you press that red blue button again, it'll go back to whatever you set it to. It'll be a lot more useful if I make that something that isn't just pure red, because I've got pure red on the other setting. So let's save that one. Then I can go red light, that one. It's not terribly interesting in my opinion. There's a button at the top which apparently translates as plant, and if you press it you get that. You can change the colour temperature of this as well, I think. Hang on. Yes. By pressing shift and then the same button. I don't really understand. I can't imagine this is going to be totally beneficial for plants, but I don't know. Perhaps it produces a certain amount of UV, most LEDs do. But I shouldn't imagine it'll be terribly effective. But it's there, it's that button there. Now, these are the more interesting ones. These are waves. That's number one. Now you can change the speed of that with the button in the middle here. Each of them only has 2 speeds. So, and then there's this, I'm prepared for this, is horrible. Yeah, there's always one of those. And then this one I like, and that does demonstrate the lovely 70s incandescent fakery that's going on. It makes it look like old-fashioned incandescent bulbs lighting and then slowly fading out, which I really like. And then we have this one. You just have to wait a while before you see the point of this one. I'll speed it up. There you go. Different colours sweep across. It's not terribly interesting, but if you had a lot of them together, that would probably look quite good, and a singular one, not so much. This is very similar, but does it in candy stripes. And finally this one, which does a sort of wave effect, which is quite interesting. It's looking more obvious if you slow it down. Sort of bounces off the side. Now, back to what I think are the more interesting ones. Oh, by the way, you can pause any of these anytime. I don't really understand why you want to, but that button there. Now, I've discovered something, and it's quite changed how I look upon this, because if we go back to the disco effects, you see on this one how, as I'm talking, you'll see how it's sort of, how would you put it, patchy. Areas light up, other areas stay dark. It'll tend to light up in the middle the more of a tss noise I make, and the outside the more of a noise I make. A couple of these will do the same thing. But if I now press M, you get a similar but different version of the same one, and basically it's more that the whole bar is lit at the same time. It'll still vary, but it doesn't really vary as much. I'm not really sure how to define one from the other, but it does mean that you've got double the amount of settings for every single one of these. I'll go to my favourite one here. This is just the same thing as that one that I just showed, in as much as it'll go in the middle and on the outside, and it reacts to different sounds that way. Directly makes them into light patterns. But as this version, you can see it looks like that, and then if I press M, you can see it then looks like that. And as far as I can tell, M is a toggle, which means that if you press it once, it's like there's a switch gone over, and then all the different ones that you then press on the controls will then be the other type that's perhaps either more on most of the time or more off most of the time. It seems to react slightly differently on some patterns if I choose this one. Now, if I shut up for a minute on this one, you'll see that it'll do these little twinkly lights. And then as I speak, it'll slowly start to notice that there's sound again, and it'll go into this sort of mode where things will run up and down, but it generally, mostly across the entire bar, it'll stay lit. Now if I press M, it'll do exactly the same thing. Now wait. But yeah, it's the same sort of thing, exactly the same. But on this one, you see on the previous one, it's sort of more, how do I put it, patchy? Now, it's very subtle, this one. It's really hard to see much difference at all. I can see that it turns off after I start speaking on that version. Yeah, it's very difficult to define, you see. It's quite difficult to say what the differences are, but there are differences. La la la. This one seems less reactive, and oh gosh, you see, now I'm not even sure which one. See, it's very, very subtle, but it is there. This one's nice because it's asymmetric. Let's see what this one does differently. Now at the moment I'm not sure which side of the toggle I'm on. Unfortunately there isn't any way of knowing other than trying to perceive from looking at it. Okay, let's see what this one does differently. Instantly they seem to, yeah, they're splaying out more. Again, it's one side seems to light across the bar more than the other. You get more light out of it. Whereas if I go to that one, I think, yeah, okay, there we go. Once it starts to react, you tend to get more, little sections will light up, and you'll get little areas where one part of it will be more lit than others, and you'll have dark areas between, whereas this one, there's more lighting going on when it reacts. It's just sort of the same, but more. It's very subtle on most of these things. You can barely tell the difference between the two, but it's there. And it's most obvious, I think, on the two end ones, as I demonstrated earlier. Whereas on this one you can see that it'll pretty much always light up the entire bar. Whereas on this version it'll light up sections, so whichever it's reacting most to, that will light up, and the other sections will stay unlit. But each one, yeah, there's a slightly different version each time you press M. I can demonstrate once again how to change sensitivity. Shift, then M. Oop, try again. Must have missed the shift. I got it. And M. There we go. And the red represents the sound it's hearing, the blue is the silence, and you tend to choose the green dot dependent upon which section you wish it to react to. So if you wanted it to react where the sound gets up to here, you set it there, you see, and then if I put it back to the other thing, it would react less. But I'll stick it to there on this one, and then you just have to leave it until it gets back. There's no other way of doing it that I can tell. And there you go, and then sensitivity has therefore been changed, although I think that may be what I started up with. And there you go. And I do really like this. I just think it's extraordinary that anybody's put this much effort in. I love the fact that it directly connects to sound. I love the fact that as you speak, I'm going to put it on this one. As you speak, you do get this really nice change in brightness that's directly connected to your voice. And you'll see that it does do different intensities that are directly connected. It really is completely instantaneous. It seems to be anyway. And you get this nice sense of absolute connection to the sound that it's hearing. And then you get this something going on in the background here. Never mind. And then you get this the change in the intensity of light as it hears a sound, and then the fade off as it goes back down again. And the cat's woken up and got interested in the light, which is why I included her in shot, because she always seems to manage to do this. And now I can put her in a different room, which she'll just yowl away. And that's what you need to do on a video, kitty. Clean your bum. You make my life more interesting, don't you, darling? Anyway, yes, the Plasma T1. Hello, darling. Hello. The Plasma T1 light bar, and I'll stick a link in where you can get one from. I only know one person selling them. They seem to be very hard to find. If you can find anybody else selling them, buy them. Tell them how great they are. With a bit of luck, they won't stop making them, because they're the only thing I found that does proper sound to light, and you just can't find anywhere else that does this. So yeah, try and get the damn people who make this to make more. I think they're lovely.